All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Auda's VTH. Today is September 30th, and I couldn't be more pleased to be in the presence of John Erickson. He is running for City Council in West Hollywood. Elections are just around the corner. So I encourage you and your friends and your family and everyone that you know to make sure that you are registered to vote and that you have your family and your friends that you are making a plan to vote. So more than ever, we need your vote right now. And I've just been very pleased to invite a lot of different influencers and also other elected officials that are running for city council. And today I'm in the presence of John Erickson. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Wow, elections are just around the corner.
I hear there's an election going
I
on.
know. I mean, I'm going to ask you about the debate last night and the national environment, the national political environment. But I mean, I think we have a lot to say. Lots of us have a lot to say right now.
Oh boy.
Yeah, absolutely. But first, I wanted to just first thank you for being here and for being always an ally for progressive movements. I met you a couple years ago when I spoke at the Women's March, and you were the mastermind organizer of the Women's March. So I guess I want to start asking you, how did you get involved in the work of the community? And yeah, how did this started in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I was so honored to be a part of the Women's March in 2017 when Emiliana Guerca and Dina Katz, the two people that started Women's March Los Angeles, asked me to come on board, and it just started became such a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
women's rights and feminism have been such a big part of my life. Growing up with my grandmother in Wisconsin, where I'm from, she would take me to the state capitol, and we would talk about things from food insecurity for seniors and people in poverty. I would help out with everything that she did. She was a woman in the Women's Auxiliary Corps after World War II. And so she just kicked so much ass. That's the only nice way I can actually say it, because she just was a role model for so many, for my sisters who are amazing feminists and women, to my mom, to my aunt, and ultimately, changing my major in college to women, gender, and sexuality studies, and, really looking at the ways in which we can apply theory with activism,
Hmm.
and really being on the ground and putting our coalition work to work and seeing how we can make the world better for everyone, and how can men become better advocates for women, use our position and privileges to stand up and help organize things like the Women's March in so many ways, which,
Yeah.
just as we all know, took over the world, and still do.
I did. This is something about you that I didn't know, and I thought
Oh,
I kind of knew you. So it's great to hear you talk about that history, and I agree with you that we need more men that are our allies that also they also need to learn how to avoid Me Too and what that means to them and to us. We live in very different times right now where the same things that were considered sexual harassment in the 50s maybe not so acceptable right now. you know
yeah. I mean, I'm a victim of sexual harassment. I'm a gay cisgendered man here, and I've obviously been a victim of it. And so, speaking up about that and really using our platform and our voices to say, we're not going to take it anymore. But how do we amplify the message? I mean, that's why we need progressive young leaders getting out there like you did and running for office, like I am running for office, to sit there and say, we're going to fight for the change that we believe in. That's a part of who we are. And that's exactly why I'm so proud to call you a friend and why you kick so much butt. But ultimately, why we need to all stick together in this really progressive fight, because everything's on the line.
yeah, absolutely. So my next question for you is, why are you running for office?
I'm running for office because West Hollywood deserves progressive leadership that really starts by looking at how our council members are there to help the people that elected them. We need council members that are going to work every single day, especially during COVID, when people are calling the city to deal with food insecurity, rental
Absolutely.
rental assistance. How do we help our business community, even, but ultimately neighborhood issues and the ways in which We're all staying safer at home, but we need council members that are, just for the lack of better words that I can choose, that are going to get down to work and make the hard choices and the hard decisions, but also not be afraid to start looking towards the future. 50% of the city of West Hollywood is under the age of 40. I'm the youngest person in this race, but I'm endorsed by people like Mayor Lindsay Horvath, who we both know, people from every Democratic club group that you and I both know of, from making the rounds to labor, to places like LALCV, Sierra Club. I'm the coalition candidate, but ultimately I'm running because we need council members that are going to work, not just when there's fanfare involved. We need elected officials that are going to put their hands in and get ready and make sure that we're doing all that we can to really come out with the best solution for the residents who really need people every day to fight for them. And I want to fight for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recently learned that in the city of West Hollywood, there were no term limits. So that changed recently, right? Because
it did.
People used to, I learned just recently that was Mr. Duran, which is basically a seasoned politician. He's been elected in the WeHo and West Hollywood for decades.
Yes.
So how is this possible?
So West Hollywood just did term limits. I want to say in 2013. I can't remember specifically. So you get 3 terms, 4 years each. And so it's 12 years. We've had elected officials that have been on the council for, as you said, a few years. But ultimately, we've had people that have served on the council with such distinction as well, that have served for a long time, in the ways in which they've helped the city. But then we have people that are only serving to serve. They're not there to actually do the work for the residents of the city and make change and enact progressive leadership, enact stuff that saves renters, helps people with who are experiencing poverty, helping our business community. I mean, looking at transportation, housing, homelessness, these things that we can't be afraid to have leaders that are going to make big decisions, look at the policies themselves and really fight for the future. And it's time that we have leaders that are the future. And I believe I'm that candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. And my question is, a lot of people, I have a lot of my my followers, people that watch my live stream that are not from LA. They think LA is everything, everything in this area is LA. West Hollywood is its own city. Tell us a little bit about West Hollywood. I think some people think they know. I actually think people in Los Angeles don't know what West Hollywood, and they don't know that West Hollywood is its own entity.
Yes, it was so funny when I was serving as a deputy to then Councilwoman Abby Land. We had a woman call City Hall because her garbage wasn't being picked up, and I had to. We went and made sure her garbage got picked up because she was a senior and she couldn't do it, and so we helped her. And then she called back like the week later, and there was the same thing. And that just doesn't sit well in the city sometimes because we're a really constituent services based city. And then finally, I looked up her address and worked with her city, and we realized she lived in the city of Los Angeles, and she literally lived a street over from West Hollywood, because West Hollywood itself is only 1.89 square miles.
It's tiny.
We're from La Brea to Doheny, all the way down to Melrose and some parts of Beverly, all the way up to Sunset. But we're roughly 36,000 residents. We're kind of the gateway to the West in many ways, because you go to Beverly Hills, you're sometimes maybe in Los Angeles again, and then Santa Monica. But we're one of the densest cities in California. We are a predominant renter city. It's roughly 72% renters, which is huge, which is why renter protection was a big reason why the city was founded, not only for LGBT rights, but renters' rights. That's why places like the Coalition for Economic Survival, who's endorsed me in this campaign, and why I'm such a renters advocate myself. We need to protect people that are staying in their home. We have a really strict rent stabilization law, affordable housing policies. I'm a planning commissioner on the city, so really looking at how we're building more affordable housing,
of course,
are critical. But West Hollywood is home to all the things that we love to go to on a Friday or Saturday night, from the Abbey to the restaurants to the nightlife to the clubs, but also home to such an amazing community of LGBTQ activists, feminist activists, environmental activists. I mean, people that just love to, as I call, rabble rouse in the ways in
Mhm.
which we do and get into some good trouble. But we have oftentimes really served as a beacon for progressive values like gay marriage. We're the first pro-choice city when we think about the issues that are coming before us right now politically, nationally, and what we do to really stand up for the little person, the little guy that doesn't
Mhm.
have a person or a champion to fight for them. And that's why I fell in love with the city. I actually worked at the city for 6 years. I
Mhm.
started as an intern even at the city,
Wow.
and worked my way up to being a deputy. But that's ultimately we um, why we fight bigger fights that might not have a direct implication in West Hollywood, but we serve such a global footprint. And I'm just so proud of everyone in the city. I have such great friends. And it feels really small townish in many ways because we're so tightly here together, but it's also really incredible because we all have so many different opinions about things.
That is, yeah. Like I said, I think a lot of us drive by or go to restaurants, and we don't even realize that West Hollywood is not Los Angeles; that it's its own city. What are some of the issues or three issues that you think are most pressing right now at in West Hollywood, at least for the residents of West Hollywood?
Yeah, I think rental issues, rent assistance. We're staying safer in our homes right now during the pandemic, and so renters' rights are critical.
Mhm.
That's why we've extended our eviction moratorium. We were one of the first cities to do that, and how we're looking at that constantly. So that's a huge issue. Our business community is also a big driver because it provides the social service funding that we need for neighborhood issues to all the ways in which we're able to help with food insecurity. Our
Mhm.
constituent services are the lifeblood of all the stuff that we do here in the city. And that's why we need council members that know the city and can call and take care of issues for them. So I think our business community getting that back on track is super critical. And then ultimately, I think it's infrastructure, transportation, and the environment. This is where I am different from all the other candidates because
Absolutely.
I'm not afraid to start talking about what that future is supposed to, and I hope looks like. We, thanks to the amazing efforts of our mayor, Lindsay Horvath, Metro approved the EIR and is funding it, and the ways in which we're going to get the Crenshaw Northern Extension through West Hollywood to increase public transportation in West Hollywood so we can get out of our cars and onto ways in which we can get on a train and not have to be in our cars, micro mobility, the ways in which we need to look at protected bike lanes, all of those things that are helping protect the environment. When we look at infrastructure improvements from our roads to clean power to water infrastructure, those are critical. But then also looking at the future and what does smart growth look like in terms
Mhm.
of affordable housing and making sure we're helping individuals in our community who are unhoused, and we need to make sure we get them into supportive and permanent wraparound services to really help tackle homelessness here in the city. Those are all some of the big issues that we're dealing with, and I know I have the knowledge on day one to step into that job and get to work.
How many people are running for office right now in West Hollywood? Is at large,
It's
correct?
at
So
large.
everyone, okay, so everybody's fighting for one or two spots.
They're fighting for two spots. There are 9 people running, which is actually a lower number than I think many people expected because this is the first time our city is going to be on the presidential ballot since the formation of our city back in 1984. And so usually the city itself would see a lower turnout in terms of voters. We're now looking at anywhere from 18 to 20,000 plus voters in the city
Wow.
who are going to be voting for the first time in a local city council election. We got to make sure they vote for the presidential ticket to make sure we bring about change nationally. But luckily, the first thing on the ballot will be our local elections, because as you and I
Uh-huh.
both know, Aura, they're so critical to the how people survive right now and the services that they get. And so, I'm number 2 on the ballot. There's a
That's so great for you.
I
Congrats.
know.
That's
Thank
really good.
you. Yeah. So we got to get to work, and so there's 9 people running, and so you can look for me there. But it's really exciting, And I have to say that this whole new Zoom COVID world of how we have to campaign has been really interesting because I feel like I've been able to connect with a lot more people, virtually. And I wish I was going door to door and meeting my neighbors, but
I know that was my
you know,
favorite part of all of running for office, believe it or not. It's a
'cause you're a
great
talker like
workout. You
me.
meet the most interesting people. It's great. It's my favorite. Well, you mentioned, we have a new way of voting. Well, we don't actually anymore because with COVID, I don't think we're going to be able to go vote anywhere. Everybody's getting their mail ballot. I am jazzed about this. I'm super excited. I really hope that people actually get to vote now that it's just literally coming to their doorstep. Let's talk a little bit about the national elections and the down ballots.
Yes.
People are so enamored. I mean, I founded a mutual aid, Ready to Help. A lot of you know about my Ready to Help group. And we meet every Tuesday at 7, and we had a mass exodus because of the debate. And I'm constantly amazed that I participated in so many debates, with my race, when I ran for office, and they're not that well attended. I mean, we're talking about, in my district at least, we have 250,000 people, and maybe if we had 100 people, that was like a well attended, candidate forum.
Yeah.
How are we going to help people understand that really the beauty and the magic lays at the local level? That this is where we solve homelessness. This
Yep.
is where we solve affordable housing. This is where we can have a better and much more robust healthcare system, where we can invest in that. This is where we can change the game about what we see and how we treat people that are abusing drugs and
Mhm.
maybe end up on our streets, or maybe not. So I mean, there's so many issues: tree planting, parks. There's
Green
so much
space.
more. What are your impressions about this? Often this tension between, oh, the national I'm calling for Biden, and they don't even know who their local elected is running for, or when are they running. how do what are your thoughts around that?
The local elections are so critical. I mean, of
Hmm.
course, we need to end this horrible fascist president who we all saw throw a temper tantrum on
Yeah.
live television last night, and whatever
Even
you want to
Fox
call
was
that.
calling it a shit show.
I mean, like, what did they say? It was a dumpster fire wrapped in a house on fire inside of a shit show. I mean, like, all the ways in which it was this awful. But you're
Wow.
so right when we're looking at homelessness. And I'm so glad you mentioned addiction and recovery when we look at the local level and how we can really address that, because that wraps into things like homelessness, that
Yep.
wraps into things like mental health. So much there. Affordable housing, and not just affordable housing, because we like to say that, but like housing that's affordable.
Hmm.
Like,
For the people that live there,
for the people
not
that
for
live
the
in West
people that are
Hollywood.
moving from New York here, but for
Exactly.
the people that live
Exactly.
here
And
already.
exactly. And but even the biggest issues that we're seeing on our national stage, public safety and police reform, though, how we're having conversations and breaking down systemic racism
Right.
and sexism and classism and all the ways. I mean, if COVID taught us anything, it wasn't that COVID broke the system. It was the system was broken, right?
And it just showed us how
And
broken
it
it is.
showed the cracks, right? So when you look at the ways in which renters need rental assistance, that's so critical. When we look at the ways in which food pantries weren't even allowed to stay open because they couldn't have people in there. And then, so how
Right.
are people getting their food? I don't know if people know this, but LAUSD actually became one of the largest food providers here in California because they were giving
Absolutely.
away their free lunches, but they didn't turn away people when they would come. If their families were there, they gave them food. LA in New York, their board of supervisors is doing a food pantry system as well and helping with food. And so those are things that we need to really talk about. And the national elections are so critical. Please vote. But when the first thing that you got to do is you got to check off that box for your local elections, because we're the ones that are doing the rental moratoriums, eviction moratoriums.
Yeah.
So that way people can stay safe in their homes. We're helping get the business community as well as the workers back to work safely. When we look at things like here in West Hollywood, like our Out Zone program. So when you drive down Santa Monica Boulevard, you see people on the streets safely, of course, but also eating and enjoying our community in the ways in which we know West Hollywood to be. But the local is where it's the bread and butter of policy making. And you and I are both policy people. I mean, when you think about the environment, sustainability, clean
Sustainability.
power, I mean, transportation, I mean, these are the ways in which the city itself can be a leader, and West Hollywood is a leader. And I'm really looking forward to championing those policies on the council and thinking big, right? And understanding that we have to meet the moment where we're at right now, but not being afraid to look out to what does 2022, 2023 look like, and can we start looking at what a future is supposed to look like that we might have had in 2020, but we had to wait a few years to make sure our public was safe and healthy, and we got back on track.
Absolutely. What do you think is the hardest thing about running for office? What has been the hardest thing for you about
Honestly,
running for office?
it's balancing all the time. As you know, I do a lot, but I love running for office. I love talking to people. I love calling people. I'm even getting, as you and I both know, I even get some weird satisfaction over call time because you're helping make sure you can get to another voter to raise another dollar to do those things. I wish I could be going out there and doing events because I love doing events. But the hardest thing ultimately is that for young progressive champions and leaders like you have been and have shown the way, it's the first question we get asked when you want to run for office is, can you raise the money?
Yeah,
And
that's super hard.
it's so hard. And, when we look at how we have to publicly finance our elections and what that's like, you ran in the city of LA, so you have publicly financed elections. We can have a conversation about that in many ways, but
make sure that when you become a city council member, that's something that you can do for other people like you.
Yeah, because I
Pave
was,
the way.
yeah, I decided I wanted to run, when I was last December. I really made the decision. And then I started looking into the, ways in which I could. And then COVID happened. And I had to really, my trusted advisors sat me down and they said, can you go raise X amount of dollars by June 30th? And I said, yeah. And I just jumped off that metaphorical cliff and I did it. And, in June, if you would have told me a year ago during a global pandemic, during all of only being able to talk this way and hosting virtual stuff, and that we would have raised over $45,000 in the month of June itself. If you would have told me that I would be able to raise over $100,000 via virtual, whatever we're doing in call time, as a 35-year-old young Democrat progressive leader who believes in the policies and progressive ways of environmentalism, sustainability, and fights for affordable housing, and you would have said that to me, I would have said you're crazy. But what I'm seeing is that we have over 400 donors. We have 78% of those donors that have given $100 or less. We have people that have given $25 and are my most robust volunteers because they want young progressive leaders in office. They want people that are gonna fight for them, and that's what's it's been hard. But those individuals that I get to talk to every day are just the reason I fight, because I fight for them. I fight for so many things, but that's why our message is so important right now. And it's critical that we get out the vote and vote when the ballots come and send them back, because it's going to be a long October for many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly we're in California, we're getting our ballots on I'm sorry, on October 3rd. I believe so.
Yeah,
on Monday.
Next week, ballots should start arriving. It's pretty exciting because it's gonna. I don't know, what was it like when you voted for your? You know what I mean? Like, what was it like? Like, I'm gonna have to call you, but
that was so surreal when I got to vote for myself.
I know.
What was most surreal is that people in the community would tag me when they would make their ballots, their mail ballots, and say like, I'm voting for you privately, or they will tag me on their posts. and said, please vote for her, I'm voting for her. It was very endearing. And I agree with you. I think the issue about progressive candidates, or just good candidates, good humans running for city council, is that you have to learn how to navigate the machine.
Yeah.
And that is actually a thing. I
Yep.
didn't realize how much of a thing was until I personally ran for office. You have to really fight the powers that be. And much about our politics, who endorses you, who supports you, is, of course, it's about power and access and money, right? But it's also about who you know and how much they like you.
Yeah.
So I mean, I came in and kind of like as a newcomer, even though I have been, a commissioner for the Department of Water and Power in LA.
Yeah.
I ran, a global campaign for the Sierra Club. I done national work. I done a lot of different things, but people still, a lot of them didn't know all the pieces to the puzzle. So when I came around to try and run for office, it was quite a surprise. So I really had to earn my way and learn how to navigate the machine, as I said. So it's so important that if you're listening to this, you support candidates like John, candidates like George Gascon,
Oh,
candidates like Holly Mitchell, people
uh,
that want
love.
to do really
Yes.
wonderful things for our community, and every dollar really counts.
Yes.
Believe me when I tell you that every dollar really counts.
It
Five
does.
dollars, $10, whatever you can support another candidate, because it's not just West Hollywood. It's not just supporting somebody in LA. I had people that donated to my campaign and supported my campaign for San Francisco because of my environmental agenda.
Yeah.
They said if LA gets to 100% renewables, that's just one step closer to for all of us to get to an all renewable future. So I hope that for you guys that are listening to this live stream, you start thinking about all these powers that are taking place, and understand that the money in politics is not just a slogan or a
Yeah.
sentence that people say. It's real.
Yes. And that's you're so critical, because I remember when you would call me and say, "What do I got to do with this club?" And I'd be like, "You got to call this person. You got to call this
Mhm.
person. You got to call this person." And just so the viewers know, I still have your button on my fridge, and it's my
Oh, I
favorite. I
love
tell
it.
everyone I love your button. But yeah, I mean, I've been involved with all the Democratic Club groups because that's how I found out and kind of discovered my community. That's why I'm so proud to be endorsed by people like and groups like Stonewall Democratic Club. You mentioned
Mhm.
Holly Mitchell and George Gascon, two people who have actually endorsed me in this race. I'm the only person in the race that they are endorsing. And you're so right. We need reformers and champions that are going to get to work, but money in politics, working, in this democratic machine, because you got to go to this group. The questionnaires, as you and I both know, in many ways, take up a whole part of your time. But can you raise the money to do all these things? These are real conversations that are hard. But I want every young Democrat to know, any person that wants to run for office, that I want to help you. I want to be your champion in ways, because I want to show you what it's like. Because I know that there are so many of my friends that are in these circles with me that want to run, and I'm kind of jumped into the pond first,
Yes.
and I'm learning to swim, obviously. But ultimately, I want to make sure that I help lead and help the next generation of just amazing, progressive young champions that want to make a difference. And that's what we need to do. We need to support each other and help each other.
Yeah, and I also want people to. Yesterday we saw the debate, and I want to talk to you a little bit about your impressions about the debate. I want people to feel that our government and our system has a place for them. That you don't have to be a white man, that you don't have to be a liar, that you don't have to cheat in your taxes, that you don't have to come from a royal family or from a family of politics of politicos, but
Yeah.
that you can have good intentions, you can do the work, and you can also have a chance. And the only way for us to be able to do that is by getting the money out of politics, by really having a robust finance, a political finance process where people can, compete. It's going to be hard with the independent expenditures because they speak much to our First Amendment to basically say whatever we want. But but there's got to be a way where there got to be checks and balances. And when people start putting out there, because you're about to get to that phase where they start just saying all sorts of crazy things about you that make
Yes.
no sense to you. I used to just laugh about the
Yeah.
things that they would say about me, including that I don't live here in my home.
Yeah. I
That I
remember when
don't
you
live
told me that
here.
one. I was like,
That I'm not from here, which I thought that was kind of interesting too. And that I was a liar when I took a pledge of not taking any fossil fuel money. So they called me out because they said that I didn't take the money, but somebody that donated to my campaign did took money from the fossil fuel industry. So therefore, I was bringing the money through some other people. So I mean, when they go low, we go high. And are you prepared for what's coming, or can you foresee things that are might get? I mean, and you guys had a lot of candidates. How many? 12?
9.
9. There's a lot of people fighting for 2 spots.
It is. I mean, at the end of the day, the race is really down to probably between 3 and 4 candidates, really working to see what it's like. Money in politics is, of course, as the president of the board for the ACLU of Southern California, I got to say, obviously that was a bad Supreme Court decision, but here we are having to deal with dark money in politics. But yeah, you're totally right. I mean, what people are going to say about me, what people would say about me even is going to be quite interesting. But that's why I've worked in the community for so long, to stand on my record, to show exactly who I am. And the best part about this election is that we are talking to voters who have no idea who the 2 incumbents are. They have
Mhm.
never heard of them. They don't know that they live in West Hollywood sometimes, but that's why we're calling them, to say, well, that's why we need your vote. You can make a change and a difference here locally in this city. And I think ultimately when it comes down to just going high, taking the high route, I've had people say horrible things about me that are just so not true. And you just have to bite your tongue and do the work and call more people and raise more money so you can get your message out there, right? And it's sad because, you and I are both fighters and we want to say, this isn't right, this isn't true. But what we need to know is I stand on the shoulders of people who have fought before me, people who will fight after me, and how can I make it better for that next generation? And so I say, let's get to work, let's move on. The theme of the campaign is don't take the bait, because ultimately that's what they want. People want you to get into the mud because that's where they live. And when you take the high road and show them why you're the candidate that's the best solution for the residents who need help, when you're the candidate that is going to fight every day to make sure that they stay in their home and that they get the services that they need, when you're the candidate that speaks to the business community,
Mhm.
the development community, the environment community, the labor community, the Democratic community, heck, maybe even some of the Republicans in West Hollywood, you
I got
know,
Republicans voted for
right?
me.
Right. Maybe you're onto something. And I'm
And
proud.
libertarians voted for me.
Exactly. And that's why you just got to fight. And as challengers, as you and I both know, it's on us to prove why we deserve a seat over people that are maybe currently on city council. But we also have to show that through the experience and the ethic. And I don't want to get down in the mud. I've been saying this a lot lately, that on November 4th or 6th or 7th, whenever we're done counting ballots, because we know it's going to be a little while, right? I want to look back on my first run for office and I want to be proud. I
Yeah.
want to be proud of the people that put their name behind me. I want to be proud of the work that I did, of the pieces that we told and the story of what we told. But I want to look back and know that I made a difference. And I'm really proud to say we're still on that path. I'm not going
Hmm.
to deter from that path. And we fight for another day, but the fight continues.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want people to reflect in on the point that the national the national political environment right now is just a reflection of all of us.
Yeah.
So as much as I hate to think that there is a little Trump personality in me, is in all of us, just like Biden is in all of us. And we have manifested these people in our political process, sadly. And the voices that support white supremacy and support hate, that support Trump, have been louder than our voices. So this is when we need to work harder and really get our voices heard with voting.
And I think our
But
voices are coming together now.
yeah,
I think that's ultimately what we're saying, is that we're up against true evil. I mean, truly. I mean, white supremacy. I mean, I think almost daily back upon my reaction regarding Charlottesville and where I was when that occurred, especially after last night's horrible debate when our president refused to denounce white supremacists. There, it's that easy. I
wow,
denounce
I
white
just couldn't
supremacy. It's not that
believe
hard.
that he couldn't keep with the talking points.
No, he couldn't. And ultimately, we need, much like at the national level and the local level, we need integrity in our leaders. We need leaders that, don't have scandal. We need leaders that don't have lawsuits. We need
That pay
leaders
taxes
that pay
with their
taxes.
fair share of taxes, just like all of us do.
Yeah, we need leaders that ultimately, like, I have amazing nieces and nephews who I know you've seen on my social media and everything, and I'm a proud gunkle, a gay uncle, right? But I'll never forget, after the 2016 election, I was home for the holidays, and my niece said to me, "Where's the nice lady on the television?" And she was 4 years younger than she is now, but she was at the age where she started to realize it. And that's when the Women's March stuff was getting crazy. It was the first one.
Mm,
And I just recommitted to working harder and harder every day, because I don't want my nieces and nephews growing up in a world where they can't see someone who's supposed to represent our country like that. They can't go outside because of climate change, or they can't go outside without wearing a mask.
mhm.
And when people ask us how bad could it have gotten, right? If we could have gone back 4 years from now, right, and said, you're literally not going to be able to go outside without wearing a face mask because this imbecile did not react to a global pandemic that he was warned about way in advance. I hope to believe that people would have maybe chose a different direction, but that's why we have to vote him out in November.
Absolutely. And then that's why we have to vote the good people in. And it's going to start at the local level. And for those of you watching, don't be scared. Don't be scared. Go ahead and vote for change and
Vote
vote
for
for
change.
new people and give other people a chance, because we have been doing the same thing over and over and it's not really taking us anywhere. So I'm excited to see you run for office. Of course, I want to ask you about your environmental agenda with West Hollywood, because that's my jam. So I
Yep.
want to know what you want to do regarding the environment. Because also you're a sister city that is not even a sister city. It's kind of like the heart, because you're like in the middle, really. So yes, what is your environmental agenda now?
So one of the big things that I'm really fighting to make sure that we do is we get people out of cars. West Hollywood itself is we're a landlocked city in the ways in which people have to drive to get anywhere, right?
Right.
We have not only a first mile, last mile problem when it comes to public transportation, we have bus routes, but they're oftentimes caught in traffic in many ways. And so we're just adding to the pollution. A lot of our traffic isn't even West Hollywood traffic, it's pass through traffic.
Right.
And that's critical. But if we can present other options for people to get out of their cars, I was using public transportation to get to my day job at Planned Parenthood downtown because it was easy, accessible. I could read, and I didn't have to be in my car, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing. So that's like promoting Metro and the Crenshaw Northern Extension and getting it to West Hollywood. That's like wanting to shoot for installing protected bike lanes along Santa Monica Boulevard. I live on Fountain Avenue. It's one of the most dangerous streets in all of Los Angeles, in my opinion. But it's completely inaccessible to pedestrians and walkers
Mhm.
and bikers. We need to look at micromobility because people
Absolutely.
who are younger don't have cars. They don't want them, but How do they get around? But they need to be protected while they travel. Additionally, we need to look at green space. I live over here on the east side of West Hollywood, which is always so funny to say because it's only 1.89 square miles. But I live close to Plummer Park, which is my park, and I love sitting under the tree that I always sit under every day and take time to relax under. But we need to look at green space and how we promote green space because we have a lot of dogs in our city and we have a lot of people that love to go out and walk because we're a very walkable city.
Yeah.
And then we also need to look at our regional connections as a city. So clean power, our role in the Clean Power Alliance, what's that looking like? Sustainable development when we're looking at not only LEED certified buildings that are being built. When we look at the ways in which electric charging stations that it can be around the city.
And now that Governor Brown declared that we all got to go zero emissions by 2035. So that's just around the corner.
Yes. So what is that like? Because I've had friends that have had electric cars that have tried to install electric charging stations into their buildings, and they can't because the infrastructure is so old. So we need to look at infrastructure improvements and what that looks like. And then ultimately, I think when we have to start looking at air quality, water management, waste management, all the fun things that local city council members get to do, right? But those play a larger role within the environment itself, right? Because you remember when we were in a horrible drought. We're still technically always in a drought, but can you imagine the drought being exacerbated by the fires that we're in? Air quality, climate change is one of the most pressing issues before us now, and it's going to be our generation that's going to have to deal with it and fight like we did. And if we think COVID is bad, having to stay home and talk electronically and not be able to go outside, like when the fires are across the street from you because everything's on fire, what is that going to look like, right? So that's my environmental platform. I think that we need to look at our climate action plan, which the city itself is reinvesting in and re-examining and how we're doing that, because those things are critical, and how we're looking at not only the city of West Hollywood in 2020, but what the city of West Hollywood looks like in 2050 and 2075, and start those policies now.
This sounds super exciting. So if people want to get in touch with you or volunteer, can that happen? Is in these COVID times, what are people doing to support their candidates?
We are all virtual. We're Zoom all the time. We're doing Zoom banks every single day. We're calling voters all day, every day. You can go to Erickson for WeHo, the number 4.com. You can volunteer there. If you want a lawn sign, you live in West Hollywood, you can get one. You can sign up to volunteer. My email is the same. It's erickson4weho@gmail.com. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to connect you. And I think like you, where I actually will respond because, we need to stick together. And so that's how you can get involved in the campaign and just help us make a difference and get to all the voters, because ballots drop next week. And so we got to call a lot of people and make sure they put in their ballots and vote for John Erickson on November 3rd.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today and for all of the hard work that you have been doing, not just now for your campaign, but for all of the progressive causes in our city, for being a champion for women's rights. We didn't get to talk a lot about your involvement with Stonewall Democratic Club, which is a super powerhouse.
It's the best club. I love that Democratic Club.
It's quite vibrant. I need to get more involved with you guys. I would love to just be more involved with that specific Democratic Club. I think you guys got a very amazing thing going.
Yeah, Stonewall's the first LGBTQ Democratic Club ever in the entire nation. It's the oldest, actually.
It's amazing. It's just incredible to me.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That is right here in Los Angeles. You should all, whoever is watching, you should also support them. They're wonderful.
Stonewalldems.org. Yes, I think I got the website right. I'm actually speaking to their leadership cohort later tonight about what it's like to run a campaign in COVID.
Yeah, that is something definitely very unique that you got to experience.
Yeah.
I wish you so much luck. I know that I can definitely see a big, bright future ahead of you. Come back to let us know what it's like to be a city council member when you become a city council member and how we can support you further when you have your exciting agenda moving forward. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
And thank you for all the work that you do. I stan Aura. I just love you. I just think you are just such an inspiration and so much.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm really thankful for your friendship because that's what means the most to me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, yeah, here we are. I mean, I feel like it's a bunch of us. I keep close with some of my other fellow candidates that I ran with at the same, the same cycle. And it's just so sweet to have the community,
Yeah.
and the solidarity,
Yeah.
because we running for office is such a particular, unique thing, and until you do it, you really don't know what it's like.
You don't.
So I'm here for you. I'm so glad that my audience got to see a little bit of you and learn more about who you are. And I really hope that you come back. And if you, I don't know, the time flew so fast. I
Oh
didn't
my
even
God, I
ask
know.
anyone if anybody had any questions for you, or if anybody had any comments. I think we didn't go too deep on the whole Trump thing, but who wants to do that,
Who
right?
wants to vote him out? Vote, just vote. I always said vote and then go call another person to vote, call another person to vote, drink a cup of coffee, then call some more people to vote.
Exactly. But what are we going to do with the people that are these people that drank the Kool-Aid? That it doesn't matter that he paid $750 on taxes. It doesn't matter. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they can show a video of him killing somebody and they will still be like, oh, he's the greatest.
Ultimately, what I think we have to do is, and I think what I've been really seeing and something I've talked about is that, we don't have conversations anymore. And I'm not saying we need to have conversations with white
Right.
supremacists. I'm not saying that's what I'm going to be doing or anything. But, I have family members that have voted for Trump that I love deeply. And I think we need to start talking to them a little bit more. I think what we've tried to do is appeal to that. And it's hard to have conversations, especially when those conversations are based around people voting against your fundamental rights. As a gay person, as you and I, as a woman of color, like you
As
are,
an immigrant,
as an
I mean, this
immigrant,
is
I mean, a vote for Trump is a direct action against our identity. It's
yeah.
against who we are. And so it's hard to move beyond that. It's hard to swallow your pride. And oftentimes it's on people like us to swallow that pride and that hardship and go approach someone of greater privilege to say, so why did you do this? Right. And that's awful. And I hope that if anything that we can do after this election on all counts is I hope we can heal, because we can't do we cannot have another 4 years of this. I mean, in any way, shape, or form. But we need to heal as a country because our country is really broken. And
I agree. I agree. Thank you so much for joining us today.
bye.
And I'll see you very soon.
See you on the other side.
Oh, definitely, for sure. Bye. Bye. So that was John Erickson. And I hope that you all enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and you can support him and ask him questions. You can follow him on our social media, on his Instagram, which is posted here on Instagram, or you can just go to Erickson 4 WeHo.com. To change everything is gonna require all of us. So please participate, and no matter what you do, just vote and encourage your family to make a plan to vote this November. Thank you guys, and have an amazing week. I will see you next Wednesday. Bye.